Out of the years of video games that I've been playing, there's one game that always brings me a specific type of joy. It's a type of game that I drag my friends into at least once a year. Something that people keep trying to make unique but always gets compared to the same decade-old game. And that type of game is the 4-player co-op shooter. And there's a 90% chance the first game you thought of was Left 4 Dead 2. But why is that? Why is this almost 2-decade-old game the first thing you think of when you think of this genre? It's a Valve game, that's why. Don't get me wrong, I love Valve, but let's not pretend people don't take notes from their games. But let me tell you something. I'm someone who hates the word clone when it comes to video games. So today I'm taking you on a journey. I'm taking you on a journey to find these games that you may have been missing out on for years. But you might be asking yourself, how are we gonna rank these games in order from best to worst? Well, let me introduce you to something you may have never seen before. That's right, I'm a real tuber now. Now, I'm not ranking these games on how close they are to Left 4 Dead because 1, that's boring, and 2, it's not fair. Instead, I'm ranking them on several aspects, 1 being general gameplay, is it a good game? 2 being replayability. These games are generally meant to be replayed, so is it good at that? And 3, is it only fun with friends, or is it fun in general? But the order that I'm covering these in is most like Left 4 Dead to least like Left 4 Dead, because trust me, it would be jarring if I was just jumping around. That being said, let's start with our first game. You're never gonna guess what it is. Yeah, that's right, it's Left 4 Dead.
I keep seeing people lay into it.
This game's just the best, man. Like I said at the beginning, there's a reason that people compare all these 4-player co-op shooters to Left 4 Dead. Everything in this game just works, and I blame that on Valve. This game is really everything you would want from this type of game and more. That's why it's held as a classic. Between the moment-to-moment gameplay, the game mode variety, the modding, all these things, it just brings this entire package together of a 10 out of 10 game. The soundtrack, the characters, the weapon feel, everything is just on point with this game. And this is all for only $10, and the game constantly goes on sale for $2. But this video is mostly for people who already know this game and want to find more like it. That being said, it's going in its rightful place of S tier, and we're moving on to the next game. The Anacrusis wears its heart on its sleeve as a game very similar to Left 4 Dead, mostly because the lead dev of the Anacrusis worked on Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. I had some pretty high hopes for this game, and I even waited till early access was over before I tried it. That being said, due to the nature of how this game was made, I am comparing it directly to Left 4 Dead 2, as Left 4 Dead 2 is on the same platform this game is, and for the same price. And I'm gonna be honest and rip the band-aid off, this game feels bad. The shooting has no punch to it, it feels lame, it feels weak. Compared to Left 4 Dead, where your bullets really tear through enemies, this game just sort of knocks them over. You could say you're non-lethally killing them and I'd believe you. And it really is a shame because I love this game's setting. The cheesy 1960s space movie, I've never seen another game that does that, let alone in this kind of gameplay style. They even do some interesting stuff with the special infected, at least a few of them. I wanted this game to be a hidden gem so bad, but there really just isn't enough to differentiate it from Left 4 Dead 2. I mean, there really is no reason to pick this game up other than variety, I guess. And while it's not offensively bad like other games on this list, the highest I can give it is a C tier. It's just not worth your time or money. But who needs to worry about cost when your game costs nothing? No, this is not Gmod. No, this is not some random Half-Life 2 mod I found. This is Codename CURE. It is free and 8 gigabytes and will run on literally anything. To be honest, I really feel like this game is specifically for people who cannot run Left 4 Dead 2. In fact, I know people use it for that because I used to have a buddy who couldn't run Left 4 Dead 2 and I have really good memories of playing this with him way back in the day. Does it look great? No, not really. Does it play great? Sorta, yeah, kinda. It's got different classes you can choose from, so there's some variety there. But do I recommend this game? Yes. Yes, I do. Even if you're not on a cheap rig and you definitely can run Left 4 Dead 2, this is still a fun game to boot up every once in a while with the boys on the hardest difficulty. It's a somewhat different experience, and I genuinely have a good time with it. Also, do you know how bad a game has to be for me to not recommend it, even if it's free? Don't worry, we'll get there. You know what this game really does remind me of? It reminds me of Turtle Rock Studios' prototype they had for Left 4 Dead way back in the day. From the Steam store page. Back 4 Blood is a thrilling cooperative first-person shooter from the creators of the critically acclaimed Left 4 Dead franchise. No, it's not. Turtle Rock came up with the concept and Valve made it. Turtle Rock themselves did not make Left 4 Dead, and you can tell when you play Back 4 Blood. I wondered to myself if there was some kind of giant hate train behind this game. I've fallen for it before. I've always heard people say that they hate Dark Souls 2. I got around to playing it, and I really enjoyed it. So maybe it's a similar thing with this game. The game clearly tries some interesting ideas like a base camp, upgradable weapons, character ability cards, things like that. And I'm not joking, I'm not playing a bit or anything like that. All of my hope went away immediately when I got into the game. This game feels like butt. This game feels like you're playing in quicksand. This game plays like Sexy Red's music sounds. I feel like I owe the Anacrusis an apology. This game has no right to be this bad for $60. And truthfully, maybe I'm missing something because the game does have better reviews than the Anacrusis. But frankly, I don't think any amount of gameplay nuance is fixing this game, and it honestly makes the next game look like a masterpiece. Now, I'm sure you've seen or at least heard of a lot of the games on this list. You haven't seen this one. This is Revelations 2012, and this is one of the most baffling games I've ever played. There's no hiding that this game is really trying to be Left 4 Dead, but it feels like it was made by an actual insane person. Have you ever played those Chinese troll maps for Left 4 Dead 2? The entire game feels like one. Like, the environments you go through feel random, but somewhat connected. And I'm sure the game has a truly riveting story, but honestly, I'm not figuring it out. This game feels like if you mixed Vindictus and the Anacrusis, because it still has the issue of the guns feeling bad. The thing is, the game is free, so if you're interested in a super weird, jank, wild ride, I really can't tell you to not try it. Do you have any idea how much it hurts me to rank this game higher than a game made by an actual Left 4 Dead developer? Whatever, I'm moving on to something actually good. I'm sick of slop. World War Z is kind of a hoot for what it is. Based off the movie, the game follows an extremely similar formula to Left 4 Dead. 4 survivors battle weak zombies with occasional strong special infected. But that's about where the similarities end. The game offers a good bit of meta progression and replayability, making this a perfect game for people who love grinding games. My one gripe with it is that sometimes the game just feels kind of floaty and airy, and a lot of the time it boils down to shooting the big blob of zombies. Overall, I think the moment-to-moment gameplay is fun, but I don't think it's that fun without friends. That being said, I would actually recommend this game if you can get it on sale. Speaking of games that I recommend, Deep Rock Galactic, or DRG, is a hoot and a half. You take on the role of 4 mining dwarves in these giant, sprawling, destructible caves. Mainly due to the destructible caves, the game features much more unique gameplay than other games in its genre. The game's meta progression leaves tons of stuff for you to unlock and experiment with, making every run feel a little bit different, not just in the mission you're trying to complete, but also the kind of playstyle you can go with depending on your loadout. The game having a ton of mission variety, on top of having a lot of things to unlock and experiment with, on top of very simple modding support, all topped off with really fun moment-to-moment gameplay, makes this game an absolute blast to play for hours on end. Even though it's not my personal favorite game on this list, the amount of love and effort that goes into it every single update cannot be ignored. And because of that, this game's going right up there at A tier. I want to take a quick moment to point something out. We're halfway through my list now. I said the games are going to get less and less like Left 4 Dead, and we're at Deep Rock. I've seen the games from here on out constantly get compared to Left 4 Dead, even though they are further from Left 4 Dead with every single entry. And I could go on a whole video-length rant about why I hate game journalists for this exact reason, but I think a lot of these games could have had a better chance if they were not directly compared to Left 4 Dead 2. Obviously, stuff like the Anacrusis and Back 4 Blood wear their inspiration on their sleeve. That makes sense. But some of these games are more similar to each other than they are to Left 4 Dead, if that makes sense. It's why I didn't really bother including Alien Fireteam Elite on this list. It's just a little too similar to World War Z and sorta comes down to which setting do you prefer more. And that's a shame because I do really like Aliens. And speaking of your purchase being entirely dependent on a setting, Warhammer Vermintide 2 switches up the formula of these games by being mainly melee focused. As I've already mentioned with some of these other games, the game features skill trees to pass through, as well as character upgrades for your individual classes. What makes this game a bit different is that these class upgrades can end up completely changing the gameplay style of that class. I mean things like going from a melee to a ranged class, going from a little pistol to a Gatling gun, or even changing what kind of magic your magic-based class uses. And these kind of changes really change up how your party might play the game, and that makes it so much more replayable in my opinion. On top of that, the game running in Unreal 3 means it'll run on just about anything nowadays. For the game's base content and DLC, I do think it justifies its own price. Unfortunately, the game doesn't have much of a player base anymore, but I'm not really going to pass up a fantasy game with how rare they are nowadays. Overall, I would recommend this game. It runs great, super fun, and it's really easy for people to get into. Unlike GTFO is one of the hardest games to recommend people, but it's also one of my favorite on this list. Compared to all the other games, this game focuses more on an abrasive horror setting, making you think more about picking fights strategically and resource management. The levels are all these dark labyrinthy facilities full of things trying to get in your way, whether that be the enemies or the environment themselves. One bad gunfight can leave you and your team scrounging for ammo and health, and even on the easiest difficulties, one bad move can lead to your entire team failing a mission. Teamwork is 100% imperative to this game, especially when you start using the terminals more and more in missions. On top of that, this game's atmosphere and immersion is just top tier, and it makes it an absolute blast to play. Some people might disagree, but in my opinion, this game feels more like an SCP game than most actual SCP games. I haven't quite gotten around to playing SCP-5K yet, so maybe there's no true comparison there, but I'm still sticking by what I said. Despite the niche appeal and somewhat steeper learning curve, I'm still giving this game A tier. I do really enjoy this game's dark, grim atmosphere, which may be a theme. Speaking of which, Warhammer 40,000 Darktide is made by the same people who made Vermintide just several years later. The game follows a very similar formula to Vermintide, just with a lot more meta progression, to the point where the game sometimes reminds me of Destiny, but for once that's a compliment. When I pay $40 for a game, I assume that it's going to have a lot of content to keep me entertained, and man, this game delivers. The game's build variety leaves so much replayability, and that applies for all 4 classes. In terms of moment-to-moment gameplay, the game is an absolute blast, and in my opinion, it does feel better than Vermintide. However, I do have a few gripes about the game. The performance can feel just a little inconsistent sometimes, which on a 4090, that's not great. On top of that, the DLC classes being released as $12 DLCs is just a little bleh. I want to rate this game higher because as much as I do love the actual gameplay, the updates are just a little too inconsistent in quality. I would recommend you get this game on a sale because with friends, it is an absolute blast. And speaking of things that are only fun with friends, Raid World War II is made by Overkill Software, mainly known for their game The Walking Dead. The game has you going into missions trying to complete an objective while simultaneously looking for things like dog tags and Nazi gold. With that, you can upgrade your base camp, unlock more missions, skills, weapons, and upgrade said weapons. The gameplay's fun. It's about the same as Payday the Heist, but no heisting mechanics. I've honestly never heard good things about this game, but honestly, after playing it, it's really not that bad. If I had to complain about the game, I'd probably just say there's not a ton of content, and for a $10 game, that's kind of expected, but the things you do unlock are all passives. They don't really change up your gameplay a lot. Nothing about this game is offensively bad, it's all just okay. That's the problem. And that wouldn't really be a problem, but there are games out there that follow this exact formula so much better. The only reason I can see someone buying this game is if they really like World War II games, because obviously there aren't enough of those yet. So because of that, I unfortunately have to give Raid World War II a high C tier. If you really like Payday and you want to switch things up a little, I would try this on a sale. It goes on sale quite a bit. And speaking of games that go on sale quite a bit, Space Hulk Deathwing holds the title as being one of the few 40k games that's good and isn't an RTS. Also one of the few where you get to play as a Terminator, so that's cool. Back when this game came out, the only 40k game that was really similar to it was Space Marine 1, which makes it kinda unique. And par for the course with most of these games so far, you have classes where you can upgrade their individual abilities, weapon attachments, and skins. As much as I want to tell people this game is amazing and it's super fun because I do love 40k and I love this game's setting, I just can't. If you take away the 40k from this game, it unfortunately is just really not that good. And that pains me as a 40k fan because I know we've been hurting for non-RTS games for a long time. But for a game where you almost exclusively use the heaviest weapons a man can carry in this universe, they just don't feel impactful at all. Half the weapons for the veteran class in Darktide feel 10 times better than all the weapons in this game, and that's a problem because you're just a dude. I do kind of enjoy the campaign a little bit, but if we're talking strictly especially the co-op aspect of the game, it just falls short, and to some is carried over that line by its setting. The game does go on sale for around $5. Assuming that you wait for that sale, and assuming you are getting enjoyment out of the 40k setting, I still feel like the highest I can give this game is a low B tier. The gameplay just falls a bit too short in my opinion, and nowadays we're not exactly hurting for good 40k games. Or 40k inspired games. Yep, I'm talking about it. Yeah, I think Helldivers 2 needs no introduction. After going from a small indie studio to being published by Sony themselves, this game was a smash hit. It's hard to find a game that's this popular with both PC and console players. Despite the game having many ups and many downs, the game keeps people coming back with its updates, usually being these large community-encompassing events. Not to mention the new packs of weapons and armor that come out every few months that can be earned entirely through playing the game. The game is an absolute blast to play, and I do recommend it. However, as Arrowhead's CEO once said, this game has a history of going from we're so back to it's so over all the time, and I don't see that as a good thing. And I'm not talking about the whole requiring a PlayStation account to play the game thing. I don't blame them for that. I guarantee you that was Sony just sticking their head where it shouldn't be. When Arrowhead's previous CEO was talking about Helldivers 2 and why it is successful, one of the main things he credited was player freedom and expression. The idea that there is no meta and that you can use these tiny little mechanics and sometimes little bugs to complete a mission in an unexpected way. Johan Pilestedt, the man I was talking about, has since stepped down from CEO of Arrowhead Studio. Ever since the new CEO took his place, the game has been pushing for more realism and more emphasis on the so-called grunt fantasy. And that never has made sense to me, because I always thought that you're supposed to be the best of Super Earth's best. So while you might be having fun with a weapon, they will nerf it into the ground the next update. They will nerf your favorite stratagem into the ground the next update. They balance this game like the enemies are playing it too. And here's the thing, I wouldn't be complaining about this game this much if the game wasn't extremely fun. This game has more potential than almost any game I've seen released in the past few years. And it frustrates me that Arrowhead has clearly hit gold but keeps going saying, nah man, I want coal. And despite my complaining, I do recommend you and your friends pick up this game. I recommend it more than most of these other games. It's just worth keeping in mind that if you buy the game, you might buy it in a we're so back or it's so over era. So I want to take a moment before I talk about the last entry to talk about some honorable mentions, mainly because I knew I was going to get comments about them anyway. I had a few rules going into this when I was deciding what games to put on here, some of the big ones being 4-player and objective-based missions, meaning not a horde shooter like COD Zombies. And while this game technically breaks both of those rules, I still really want to talk about it. Killing Floor is old but holds up great in my opinion. The two things that kept this game off the list is that you're not progressing through the maps, instead you're just surviving for as long as you can or until the game is over. On top of that, your max player count is technically 6, but most people just change one file and change it to about 20. The thing that makes me truly love Killing Floor though is its difficulty. And despite this game's version of Special Infected not really requiring co-op to get out of, the game still does require a bit of cooperation. The game's dark and gritty atmosphere absolutely hits, especially in an era where everything has to look clean and bright. This game's aesthetics are just completely unmatched even by other games in the franchise. If you're looking for a challenging horde-based shooter to play, I would 100% recommend Killing Floor. My one gripe with the game is that it is old and some things just do not work very well, so if you want a more modernized version of it, I would recommend Killing Floor 2. And while you may think it's just a normal sequel, you know, just the last game done better, you could not be more wrong. Despite being a bit more user-friendly and easy, Killing Floor 2 is generally regarded as the more modern version of Killing Floor 1 for better or for worse. For better in the fact that the game looks great and plays very smoothly. For worse in the fact that $10 loot box for one gun. For better in the fact that it's way easier to queue into public games with your buddies and download custom maps. For worse in the fact that the game has an unnecessary amount of weapon bloat so they can sell you more DLCs. I think you get what I'm saying. I don't hate Killing Floor 2, after all Killing Floor 3 is out there, but it mostly just kinda comes down to preference, whether you prefer Killing Floor 1 or 2. But at the end of the day, I think the games are actually different enough to warrant trying both of them at the very least. After all, at least you actually can play with 4 people. I don't know what the new obsession is with making the max party limit in games just 3 people, but it's like the only thing I can complain about with Space Marine 2. Earlier I mentioned that I don't think we're really hurting for good 40k games anymore that aren't RTSs, and I think this is one of them. It's one of those few 40k games where it feels like it was actually made by fans for other fans. And if you're super into 40k, you're gonna love this game. And if you're not, I still think you'll enjoy the gameplay. If you feel like cutting one of your buddies out, I would 100% recommend this game. And for the last honorable mention, I'm kinda torn on it. I used to love Zombie Army Trilogy trilogy back in the day, but I don't think it's held up very well technical-wise. If you don't know, Zombie Army is a spin-off of the Sniper Elite franchise, and it retains all of those Sniper Elite mechanics, which work really well in Sniper Elite, not as well in a zombie game. Don't get me wrong, the music and aesthetics of this game are absolutely unmatched. However, some of the technical issues, especially the crashing, really make it a hard recommendation. Personally, I would drop an extra $5 on Zombie Army 4, and then come back to the trilogy if you can find a fix for it. I can deal with the slowdowns, I can deal with the jank, it's the crashes that I just can't deal with. But that does it for the honorable mentions. Now I want to talk about the last game on the list. Payday 2 is one of my all-time favorites in this genre, and I'm about to tell you why. This game is extremely popular, but if you don't know, the entire idea is that you are a heisting crew stealing from banks. That was the idea, at least in the first game. Nowadays, the heists have gotten way more extravagant and even supernatural at times. But why is this game so great? Why do I hold it to such a high standard? Outside of just the base gameplay, there's one core feature that keeps me and millions of other players coming back to this game all the time, and that's replayability. In my opinion, when a lot of people talk about video games being replayable, what they really just mean is a slog. Yeah man, just do the same thing a million times to unlock one attachment for one gun. It's awesome, it's so replayable. When you first start Payday, you are unlocking things at a dopamine blasting rate. I don't know if that's the proper term, but that's how it feels. You unlock more skills, more weapons, you get more confident and go on to higher difficulties, giving you a higher payout. You spend more time curating the perfect loadout for specific missions. You go to higher difficulties, you play more stealth, you learn the missions better. And this is all good and fun, but what do you do when you reach the highest level?
What do you mean? Now we can finally play the game.
Once you get to that point, this game starts being indescribably fun. This is when you can really start experimenting with weapon builds and character builds, trying out harder difficulties, and that is so much fun with 3 other of your buddies. This game's base content is so much to work through, and if you're a collector like me, you're gonna have an absolute blast with this game. I will never forgive Starbreeze for what they're trying to do to this game after the failure of Payday 3. If you have 3 buddies who you think would like this game, try the game for $10. If you like it, wait for a sale and get that Legacy Collection. I'll be fully transparent. I love this game. This is one of my favorites in this genre. It's going straight in S tier, right next to Left 4 Dead 2. So there it is. There's my tier list for 4-player objective-based co-op games. Some people might definitely disagree with this, so I'm looking forward to seeing some opinions in the comments, as well as anything I may have missed, because I really do look forward to those too. It's been a while since I put this much effort into a video, so let me know what you think overall. But anyway, I'm going to end things here. Let me know what you thought down in the comments, and I will see all of you next time.